And do all body cells have mitochondria? All cells, some more and some less, right? That is where glucose and fatty acids or amino acids should enter. In order for glucose, fatty acids, or amino acids to enter there, we first have to transform them. Because really, the mitochondria only accepts a substance called acetyl coenzyme A. That is the only thing that enters the mitochondria. Therefore, it should be able to transform glucose into acetyl coenzyme A, or fatty acids into acetyl coenzyme A, or amino acids into acetyl coenzyme A. If I am able to keep transforming this, then I have the entry pathway to the mitochondria secured. The other pathway to obtain ATP is outside the mitochondria, but this is very inefficient. It is very inefficient. Notice that for 1 molecule of glucose that I put into the mitochondria, I can obtain 36 to 38 molecules of ATP, which is quite a bit of energy for each molecule of glucose. But for each molecule of glucose that I put in, which I am not able to put into the mitochondria and place in the cytoplasm, notice how much I offer. 1 or 2 molecules of ATP. So, what do we need to be able to provide energy? We need mitochondria to be present. The first thing is that there are mitochondria, because that is where there is greater energy efficiency. What advantage does the mitochondria also give me? That I can input fats. And notice how many molecules of ATP I can obtain for each fat that I input. Fats should be fundamental energy substrates with which, under normal conditions, my body tissues obtain ATP, because we all have excess fat. And if we could break it down to use it, it would be wonderful. But for this, it is necessary for insulin to function well in the body. When insulin is not well adjusted, when there are cases of insulin resistance with hyperinsulinemia, the ability to oxidize fat is very limited. And we have another added risk factor that makes it difficult to obtain ATP in the mitochondria, which is a sedentary lifestyle. Sedentary lifestyle, loss of physical activity, loss of muscle, sarcopenia, that lowers the mitochondrial density of an organ that is absolutely key to understanding energy distribution, which is the musculature. An isolated muscle has very little impact on the body, but 20 kilos of muscle contracting at the same time conditions the entire energy distribution. Muscle contraction generates local adaptations that are very interesting, but it generates distant adaptations that are even more interesting. One of the things that muscle does is facilitate the ability of peripheral body tissues to increase mitochondrial density again. Muscle produces substances that, when they reach other tissues, allow them to improve mitochondrial density. But for that, it is essential to increase the pattern of physical activity, use a little more energy. And as we said, once energy is generated and we expend it, we release energy. That is what is needed to use that energy. And from there, what do we do? Very well. Convert ADP back by adding another phosphate group to form ATP. That is to say, it is a system that can be recycled. I expend energy, leaving a waste molecule called ADP. But if I add another phosphate group, I have ATP again that I can use. The key is where this comes from. And that comes from the mitochondria. It has to come from the mitochondria. That is why when there is no mitochondrial density, when my mitochondria are not functioning well, what I cannot do is recover energy efficiently. And when I do not recover energy efficiently, that ATP breaks down into other molecules like AMP, which ends up being a precursor that leads to toxic substances for the body. When I do not recycle ATP, I'm not able to convert this substance back into ATP, it starts breaking down PPPP. Well, that ends up in uric acid and ammonia, which are toxic substances for the body. So, mitochondria mean health. What else is essential to maintain energy levels and functionality in the body? Which is also another widely used supplement. Well, we have seen ribose, which can be used as a supplement. We have seen magnesium, coenzyme Q, ubiquinol. Ubiquinol serves many functions. The first is that it provides protection to the mitochondria, and the second is that it is the most important coenzyme in the final part of mitochondrial metabolism. Mitochondrial metabolism that is the entire process of transforming the substrate into ATP, occurs in different stages. Most of the energy will be released in the final stage. There are 3 different steps that are perfectly linked in the mitochondria. In the final part, oxidative phosphorylation, which depends on the electron transport chain, which are very important mechanisms in the mitochondria. The largest amount of ATP will be produced in the final part of the process. Well, without ubiquinol, ubiquinone, without coenzyme Q. There is no possibility of properly assembling the ATP molecules so that they can exit the mitochondria. So, many times another supplement that we are going to use, or that can be used, or that you will see people using for energy disorders, is coenzyme Q10, which is a fat-soluble substance, a type of fat that the body also produces. But it is a fat that is produced in an oxidized state and to acquire its active capacity. To function as a mitochondrial protector, it needs to be reduced. So we talk about ubiquinone or we talk about ubiquinol, and we can find supplements in both forms, ubiquinone and ubiquinol, coenzyme Q and ubiquinol. When we give it this way, we have already skipped this step. It is a bypass. So, when there are significant energy disorders, let's help the body. Let's use the already reduced form. Let's give ubiquinol, which also requires a lower dose to generate the effect. Yes, ubiquinol, directly ubiquinol. This is especially important, for example, in patients who are taking statins, because one of the things that statins do, the medication used to lower cholesterol production, is block this entire pathway. This is the pathway called the mevalonate pathway. So the statin blocks this, and all these steps, you see, the ones through which cholesterol is produced stop occurring. What happens is that this entire step is also necessary for the body to produce coenzyme Q. So the use of statins often leads to the depletion of coenzyme Q deposits. Without coenzyme Q10, there is no mitochondrial activity. So, what do we often see in patients who have been taking statins for a long time? Energy disorders, primarily in organs. The muscles suffer, the heart suffers a lot, the muscles. Well, in these patients, perhaps using a coenzyme Q supplement would be especially interesting. And in these cases, it is better to give ubiquinol. We mentioned earlier ribose, another energy substrate. Without ribose, there is no ATP. It is part of the ATP structure. But notice, to get to ATP from glucose, look at all the steps involved, everything that has to happen. Well, these initial steps, they are especially complex because the enzymes involved here are used for a lot of things. And there are times when glucose, although present, does not end up here. It ends up in other places. Well, you see, ribose enters just below these steps that may be limited. It is a way to create a bypass so that there is ATP. So it is another supplement that is used very frequently. Ribose as an energy source. And doses can reach up to 15 grams per day. There are very interesting studies done with patients with fibromyalgia where up to 15 g of ribose is used per day. And speaking of mitochondria, the last substance I would like to talk about is a substance that is relatively, I don't know if to call it, it's not new. It's a super ancient substance. It is a type of vitamin B called PQQ, one of the most active substances in life. Very ancient, very ancient. A substance that has 2 major benefits. One, it provides a lot of protection against oxidation. It is surely the most powerful antioxidant we can find right now. It can have effects on more than 200,000 oxidants. That is an incredible amount as an antioxidant, but it also facilitates the process of differentiation and survival of cells precisely because it provides protection to the mitochondria. PQQ is also found in some foods: green pepper, kiwi, papaya, parsley, green tea. But most of the PQQ should be produced in the intestine. It is the bacteria in our microbiota that should provide us with PQQ. Well, generally, since we have our microbiota as it is, and the intestine is as it is another substance that when used in supplement form, is used in relatively low doses. Studies indicate that with 10 milligrams of PQQ, there is already an effect. Therefore, it is not necessary to use very high doses. It is not like ribose, which is given in higher doses. It would be another very interesting substance to maintain function in the mitochondria. What other substances would there be? And this is the last slide. Well, all the B vitamins. All the B vitamins would be essential. Without B vitamins, the Krebs cycle, which is the place, is the cycle, the mechanism, the biochemical pathway of transforming substrates into ATP would not function. Especially important. There are two vitamins that are especially important. Vitamin B. Vitamin B. Generally, the rest of the B vitamins are precursors of each other. That's why many times what is given is a complex. You give a complex of those B vitamins that contain all of them. And there you have the entire B vitamin profile necessary for the body to function. But there are two of them that are not included, which are folic acid, vitamin B, and thiamine. Vitamin B and thiamine are especially important for glucose metabolism as a source or energy substrate to maintain the transformation of glucose into pyruvate and from pyruvate into acetyl coenzyme A, which is what enters the mitochondria. Vitamin B stabilizes. It is the fundamental coenzyme of the enzyme called pyruvate dehydrogenase, which takes pyruvate and transforms it into acetyl coenzyme A. Without vitamin B, transformation pathway, which is the prior step to entering the mitochondria, is also hindered. Vitamin B is another very interesting supplement to use in cases of chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, as it is another mechanism to help the body start functioning again through the mitochondria.